Hey everybody, it's Rob again. It's time for another Member Talks episode. This one's going to be a lot of fun because we have Stan Goldstein from the American Funeral Director magazine, who is actually going to be interviewing us, the WSFDA, about Member Talks. And so we're going to record this. We're going to put this out as our podcast, as our YouTube, while Stan writes his article, which will come out in the first week of February of 2021. So check it out. Stan, how you doing?
Good, Rob. Good. Thank you for having me on. And as you said, we'll reverse roles. So I'm going to ask you questions. So you're the guest on this one. How did Member Talks come about? Tell me how that all developed, where you got the idea, and when you first got it, how you implemented it. So take me through that.
Yeah, actually, Member Talks was fun to kind of come up with because of the fact that we've really for the last couple of years been revamping a lot of stuff here at the association, and especially one of those revamps was our website. On our old website, we had a icon that you could click that took you to a YouTube page, which was our YouTube page, WSFDA's YouTube page. There was nothing on it. We had a YouTube page, but we had no videos on it to watch. And so we thought, that's kind of goofy. We need to put some content on there if we're going to be advertising. We have this YouTube page. And we had had the guys from Undertaking the Podcast out at our conference in 2019, a DeathCon 2019, podcasting. We thought, you know what, that was kind of a cool thing to do. Why don't we try to do something like that? We already were using Zoom and different things like that to record some board meetings with. So we said, let's see where it goes. And that was really the first idea, was let's put this together, put some content out there and fill up that YouTube page. And now we've just finished up our 1 year anniversary. So we've got over 52 episodes on there on a weekly basis.
So is that the goal, to do one a week?
That was our thought process. Let's try to do at least one a week, not knowing if that was going to work, not knowing if we were ever even going to get enough people to join in the conversation.
Right.
But as it's progressed, as it's snowballed, we've had a lot of people that have been calling and saying, we want to participate. And so we've really, we've kind of limited it to just once a week because of the fact that it does take some time to produce and edit and put together and upload. But yeah, once a week. And then, we started in August, or actually September, adding that to the podcast formats, which same show, just a couple extra steps of uploading.
That's what I was going to ask you. So the podcast is basically just an audio only version of the YouTube version of it. Yeah. When we had the request for podcasts because people couldn't dedicate that much time to sit in front of a computer and watch the show. But they could put it onto a podcast and listen to it while they drove, while they were in the prep room, while they were doing whatever. So we thought, yeah, it makes sense. Let's figure out how to do that. And we put it into podcasts. So it's the exact same show. It drops on Tuesdays on a podcast, and then it drops on the following Thursday on YouTube. So the podcast people get to hear it first then before YouTube.
They do, but a lot of times we will put stuff up on the screen that you have to watch the video to see what we're even talking about. So if we have like a book that we're reviewing or talking about, we can show the book and things. So yeah, it's worth it to watch it twice, or to listen and then watch.
Oh yeah. I know I like to listen to podcasts when I drive. That's when I feel like full attention to it. Yeah. And as you said, people in the prep room too. So yeah, obviously you can't watch and do two things at the same time. So the name itself, and why the exclamation point? How did you come up with the name? And I'm just curious about the exclamation point. Member Talks, exclamation point.
It started out, we actually started out calling the show 5-Minute Member Talks. And the idea was it was going to be just 5 quick minutes, introduction of who you are, where you're at, what do you do type thing. More of a way to just kind of get you out there. And it was geared more for the members of the WSFDA. As that grew, the shows got longer, so we got rid of the 5-minute part of it. Second, we realized that, you know what, just because you're not a member of WSFDA doesn't mean you're not a member of funeral service. And so we wanted to really expand that and get a farther reach and talk with members of funeral service. So we shortened it to Member Talks the exclamation point really was kind of one of those, just let's add something to give it a little bit more whatever.
Yeah, so good. Good. Yeah. And what was the reaction? You said getting people. Did you find you've been doing this a year now. Are you have people lined up who want to be done, or are you ever like saying, "Hey, come on, I want people on here"? Or are they knocking on your door like, "Yeah, I'm interested"?
It's a little of both. It's a little of both. When we very first put this out, we put it out we put out a call on our social sites, Facebook and Twitter and things, saying, we're going to put this show on. You want to be a part of it, come check it out. And we had a whole bunch of people that signed up and said, yes, we want to do this. Then they realized it was going to be recorded and put onto YouTube, and all of a sudden everybody kind of scattered. So at first we were kind of searching. We were asking people to come on and join us. But as this has grown, we've had more and more people that have contacted us and said, I'd like to do a show. I got something I'd like to share. And you know what? It's open to anybody. It really is. If you want to come on and talk funeral service, anything to do with funeral service, that's what the show's for. It's just to share information. So we encourage you and invite you to contact us and come on the show.
So you're saying people were fine being on like a podcast, but they didn't want to have their picture up or be videoed?
Yeah, we've had a few folks that have been like, I'll do it as long as, I'm not seen. I'm heard, but not seen. And it's like,
Right.
well, but we want to see you too. We want to know who you are. That was the whole original intent, was to introduce you to people and to get those relationships built and created. We've had a lot of people actually that have contacted us afterwards that have said, because I was on your show and because people saw me, I got a call from somewhere around the world asking us to participate in maybe a transfer out of the state or something like that. So it's brought some business to folks as well, just for being on the show.
Oh, great. And I saw your first person you had on was Lisa Devereaux. And she was one of our finalists for American Funeral Director Magazine's Funeral Director of the Year for 2020. So I was glad to hear from Lisa. I had a chance to interview her a couple months ago. Why was she the first one? Or give me a little background on having her on first.
At the time we began, Lisa was our president of the association, and she is now our immediate past president. In August, she rolled into the immediate past president role. But we thought, you know what, this is something that was brought to the board, approved by the board, sponsored by the board. Why not let the very first person be the president of the board to come on and really kind of be the cheerleader, if you will, to say, hey, come check it out. Come be a part of it. And, Lisa's done a lot of great things for the association. She's very well liked and has been really just for me personally, a lot of fun to get to know her through being a part of the board, working with the board, and then of course with Member Talk. So it just seemed like a perfect fit to have our president and friend, Lisa, be the first person to come on.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed listening to her. It was good. You came up with this idea before the pandemic, which I guess really hit about mid-March, and you kept it in December. So we're really, that gave you a lot more topics then to cover. And I was listening to one of your I'd say from, I think, April or May, one of your YouTube videos talking about getting PPE and things like that. So it really turned into a valuable tool to help Washington State funeral directors. Did they need help? Here's what you can do.
Yeah. We toyed with the idea in mid 2019 of using technology for board meetings, because we hadn't, our board is consistent of board members that completely cover the state of Washington. And not always are we able to all get together in one room. So we began using Zoom and technology such as that to create board meetings or have board meetings. And it just sort of worked into, we can actually use this with this idea of member talks. Let's see how it works out. And so with just a little camera and a little microphone, and that's really our equipment. it just works that way, and it's been going strong ever since.
Yeah. Going back to March, you had Dominic Astorino on, and you discussed COVID-19 in depth, and that was in a mid-March episode. What were the early days and weeks, ground zero, like for funeral professionals out in Washington State?
It was interesting because depending on where you were in Washington, you were either, very deep into COVID. Some places were not. It just depends on where you were when the state. The majority of COVID that we were seeing hovered around that Seattle area and then sort of came east towards the Spokane area, but it was a very slow progression. Of course, being brand new, nobody knew anything about it. So we were just sort of working and doing the best we can to get through that process. Now we've been very fortunate, I would say, in Washington State in the fact that we've seen a lot of tragedy from COVID, and we still are with our second wave, but we've been able to serve families for the most part in pretty much the same capacity that we've always served families. We haven't seen the backlog that we've seen in other parts of the country. I think part of that is the fact that Washington is a very, very high cremation rate. We hover at 80%. Pre-COVID, we were at 80%. Even now that we're in COVID, we're still 80%. But with that high cremation rate, we also have a lot of operating crematories in the state, and we have a lot of operating cemeteries. So we haven't run into the backlog issues. The only real issue that we've seen is what everybody else has seen, lack of opportunity to receive PPEs, that sort of stuff. And so we've done our best to help provide those to members and non-members throughout Washington.
Okay. What has the feedback been? Have you heard a lot from your fellow, funeral directors out there, or, hear from people? I guess we don't do conventions anymore right now, except virtually. Yeah. So, you hear from people who have listened and watched.
Well, the last live convention that we were at that I was able to attend was NFDA in Chicago. And it was fun because I did have one person come up to me at that convention and introduce themselves and saying, I've watched your show. I've seen it and I've enjoyed it. And to me, that was really cool I didn't know who this person was. I got a new friend now with him, but that was really exciting to me to think that it's going out there to people. Our original intent was just for people in Washington to see it, but it's going everywhere. But, the idea is really we want to share information, and that's why we do the show. It's not, I'm just fortunate enough that I get to be the one that does it. I get to be the one that does the interviewing with folks. And so that's been exciting. It's been fun. We've seen some feedback. Most of our feedback we see is on social media. And we've had a lot of positive feedback from it, which has been great. We get a lot. Of course, with social media, there's always not so positive, and
yes,
you kind of take it as it goes. Roll with it.
Yeah. How do you like being the host? Have you ever done anything like this before? And
when
you first started, like, hey, I could do.
It was simply, we brought it to the board. We said, "What do you think?" They said, "Yeah, do it." And it was like, "Oh, okay." And so I'd never hosted anything like this before. I'd never done anything like this, but I've really come to love it. It's a lot of fun. We do it right here. What you're seeing behind me is the head office of WSFDA. It's the inner office. We have an outer one that my kids actually are at right now doing virtual school from. Which may be why we're getting some internet connectivity problems of the two other computers streaming at the same time.
Right.
But, it's fun to be able to come to work every day. And amongst the other things that we get to do is put on this show right here from Spokane and talk to people all over the world from right here at the office.
I want to talk a little bit about you, Rob. A little bit about your background, how you got into funeral service. Are you a native of Washington State? So tell me a little bit about your background.
I was actually born out of state. I was born in California, and at the age of 3, I moved to Washington. So I kind of consider myself a native of Washington, although not being born here. Um, I really got into funeral service on a fluke. It was something where I have an uncle that worked for a funeral home in my hometown. He was a pre-need agent. He's also a minister at a church. And he always joked with me as a child or as a teenager, I'm going to get you a job at the funeral home. I think you'd be great at it. And I always said, no, that's not going to happen. That's the last thing I want. As it turns out, one day he called me right after I got my license at age 16 and said, I need you to come down here to the funeral home and give me a ride. And so, of course, being a young 16-year-old driver, I thought any opportunity to drive was, let's do it. So I agreed. But what I didn't realize was on the way down there, he was actually talking to the funeral director and the manager saying, hey, my nephew's coming down. He needs a job. He would be great at this. Let's do it. So when I got there, I walked into a job interview at the funeral home, which was really rare because during that conversation, the funeral home got a phone call of somebody that needed picked up at the hospital. So it was kind of like, okay, well, now's as good a time as ever to see how you're going to do. Let's go. And I went up, I made the removal with the funeral director. Actually, that transitioned into witnessing the embalming. They showed me how the embalming went. And then the funeral director gave us the company card and said, you guys go get dinner, but you got to take this person and drive them up to our other funeral home 60 miles up the road and then get dinner on the way back. And so, free dinner out of it. I thought, yeah, I've gone this far. Let's see what happens. That's how it worked out. By the time I got back, they asked if I wanted to work there. I said yes, and I've been in funeral service ever since.
Yep. And when did you first get your funeral director's license?
So I did it was an apprenticeship at that time. It's now called an internship, but I completed that. I went to mortuary college down in Gresham, Oregon at Mount Hood, and graduated there in 97. And immediately sat for the national and state exams and received my funeral director and embalmer license in 97. So I've been licensed as a dual license as both. I carry licenses in Idaho as well as an Idaho mortician. I also carry life and disability license in Washington and in Idaho, so it allows me to do pre-arrangement. I actually have as well an insurance agency that I work through various funeral homes throughout Washington and Idaho doing their pre-arrangements for them, as well as the executive director for WSFDA.
Right. I see you're operate Dignified Assurance Planning.
Yeah.
And when did that start? And so were you a funeral director at a funeral home? Did you ever own your own funeral home or worked out through funeral homes just before you started Dignified?
So actually I was Dignified came about kind of out of to fill some needs for some funeral directors. It started out, I had left a position that I was at, came home, wondered what I was going to do next. And I started getting phone calls from friends of mine from funeral homes saying, what are you doing right now? Because I need some assistance. I had one funeral director that needed somebody to write their pre-arrangements for him. I had another call from a funeral director that needed some assistance with some vacation coverage and then some, help on services and things. And so Dignified Assurance Planning kind of was created out of a necessity primarily for, filling the needs of prearrangement. I've since received a funeral establishment license in the state of Washington. So technically Dignified is a funeral home, for lack of better terms. We don't operate as a funeral home though, but we have that license because part of what we're available to do is pickups and removals for people. So it kind of works out that way as well. I don't do that often, but if somebody needs it, I can make a pickup and deliver to the funeral home.
And what year did that start, Dignified? did you officially start that?
The official start was 18, and when that was really more of the just pre-need. That was all we were doing was pre-need at that time. We got the establishment license actually here very recently, so we've been able to do the removals and things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where was that first funeral home when you were 16? Where was that? What was the name of it, and where was it located that you mentioned?
That funeral home's name at the time was Betts Funeral Home. It was in Wenatchee, Washington. It's now called Jones and Jones Betts Funeral Home. But yeah, it was at Betts Funeral Home. In fact, at age 16, by the time I was 18, I was on my second year there, and one of the people from our high school annual went out and took a picture of me standing at the sign. So in my senior annual, if you look through my senior high school annual, there's the section of where people work, and there's people that show themselves working at McDonald's or wherever 18-year-olds work, and then there's me standing in front of the funeral home sign. So it got a lot of attention back then.
Did your friends think it was cool or think it was strange, or what was the reaction?
It was a mixture. It was a mixture of both. Half of them loved it. They thought it was pretty cool. The other half was like, what? You work where?
And the key thing was you loved what you were doing though, right?
You know what? From day one, I really did. I really found a strong desire to be in a funeral home. As soon as I started, the first goal that I had was I want to go to mortuary school, and I want to become a licensed funeral director and a licensed embalmer. At the time, you didn't have to. At the time, you could have stayed as an apprentice. There was no real time requirement to get that, but it was something that I really wanted to do and felt strongly about from day one. And I've been really proud of those licenses, and I keep those on my wall. You can see them behind me.
Yeah.
Very happy to display those.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to member talks a little bit. And what has it been like for you to getting to know some people who you may not have known well before to do the interview with them? And I assume that's been very rewarding. All the different
It's been very rewarding because I've met people now from all over the country, all over the world that I now call friends, people I've never figured I would even ever meet. But it's fun because you can go back and talk through email and phone calls and things like that, and kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And it's been very rewarding to meet more and more people out there that are in the same profession and are experiencing the same joys, the same issues, the same everything. Maybe a little slight variations, but for the most part, we're all kind of going through this together, especially now that we're pandemic mode. How are we handling pandemic mode as funeral professionals? And so it's been fun to meet people and really get to know them and learn from them.
Right. And, with the pandemic, as we touched on before, there's no in-person conventions or meetings or things like that. So it's also, in a way, I don't know how to word this correctly, but you're sort of ahead of everything by doing this, because you are able to still connect with people and bring people out there to an audience.
Yeah.
Might not have been able to.
It certainly gave us an advantage especially when people started talking about streaming funerals and stuff. It was kind of at that point for us, it was really kind of, we're used to this. Mm-hmm. So we do get a lot of feedback from folks. I'm still brand new. I don't know how to do this, and that's fine. We're happy to teach and to help people set this up for sure. But we've even heard, some positive feedback from that. From doing your show, Member Talks, we're now using these platforms to make funeral arrangements with families all over the country. And so we're getting that kind of feedback as well. And that's been rewarding because it's like, this was just an idea to meet people, but now we're actually using it to educate and to advance funeral service. And so, that's been super exciting for us.
Right. And how about, do you have a list of topics that you want to cover, or when you first started out, were they like, I want to cover all these topics? And does that topic list keep growing if you have one?
You know what? Member Talks has been total spontaneity or spontaneous. It has we've never had a script. We've never had a particular topic. It's just, somebody will call us or we'll call somebody and say, hey, you want to come on board? You want to come do this with us? And the first question is, what do you want to talk about? And the answer is, I don't know, whatever's going on in your world. That's what we want to talk about. And it's interesting because you'll start a conversation with somebody and they'll be talking about, a service that's coming up or something. Before long, we're talking about completely opposite things, but that conversation has brought it, to that point, and it's expanding that, because we're getting also feedback, hey, I didn't realize that this was an issue for other people besides us. We thought this was just something that we were dealing with, but we watched the show and my goodness, it's nice to know other people are dealing with it and how they're dealing with it, so we know what we're doing. So it's really just been something of, I guess if you could say anything, and I'm a little biased here, I guess if you could say any topic that I would like to talk more on, it is pre-need, because I have that pre-need business,
right,
and I love pre-need. I really do. So that is one topic that I think, again, being a little biased, I would love to talk more about, but at this point, it's anything and everything funeral.
Well, I'm sure you'll get to that too. You'll have it. You won a week, so you'll be going strong. You touched on this a little before, the technology aspect. How important is that now for funeral directors? Do you think you obviously were prepared because you had been doing this before the pandemic? Did you find many were prepared, or they've learned it quickly or had to learn it quickly? And if, I was listening to one of your podcasts where they were talking about the best way to do Zooms. And so even your YouTube channel and the podcast have helped funeral directors learn that.
I think that funeral directors are getting more inclined to using of technology. The technology that we're talking about right now is nothing new. It's been out there for 10 years, being able to do these types of interviews and things via Zoom or whatever. I think the biggest factor that we're hearing about is really fear of technology. And so we're seeing a lot of funeral directors that are kind of dipping their toe in the water a little bit now. And they're using things like a Facebook Live or something, some format like that, without trying to jump right out there and buy a bunch of equipment or try to learn a bunch of new stuff, trying to do it in slow incremental movements. And as good as that is, I'm happy to see that that's happening. I think that we need to continue that movement a little bit faster and get to funeral homes that are streaming, funeral homes that are doing these type of meetings, not because they have to due to a pandemic, but because they want to serve the family better. And so, I think that for me personally, I think that it's a great way to do arrangements. It's a great way to have services. It's a great way to bring people together that could not get together because maybe they're out of the area, maybe they have to work, maybe, whatever the situation is, they can't attend, but they definitely want to. This is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And very cost effective too.
Yeah. And with the Funeral Directors Association, did you hear from a lot of funeral directors in, say, March, April, May, like, help, how do I do this now? I see I need to do this. Tell me how to.
We had a few in those months that were talking, technology questions and stuff. And we definitely were able to kind of walk them through and get Zoom set up and various things like that. The biggest topics that we were hearing in those months, though, were PPEs, availability of PPE, and wondering how in the world. We had funeral directors reporting to us that they were using their neckties as face masks because they could not have accessibility to face masks. They were using their neckties tied around their face. And so that's been a big concern. It's been a big concern. We're on the front lines and unfortunately, I think that a lot of folks maybe kind of forget about funeral directors, if you will.
Unsung hero. Yes.
Yeah. But, the nice thing was, and I can't state this enough, we had a couple of donations to the association office of disposable masks and some disposable gloves. NFDA kicked in a couple thousand masks and some gloves. And then our friends over at LifeNet Health kicked in quite a number of disposable masks and gloves. And we've been advertising that since we received those, and we have very, very few left, but we've been just giving those out to anybody that calls and says, I need this stuff. We ship it to them and say, here you go, protect yourselves as best you can. And that's been nice to be able to do that for members. It's been nice to be able to do that for people that are not members of the association. We've just opened it up to everybody.
Good. And you had mentioned you want to cover pre-need a little bit more. Any other topics off the top of your head that you could think of, like, yeah, I haven't really gotten to that one yet, and that I want to do?
Yeah, actually, we did a poll at our second to last district meeting, the one that we had in June of this year. Of course, it was a virtual meeting, but we took a poll. And surprisingly, I know I've mentioned that Washington State is 80% cremation. Surprisingly, the number one topic that we saw throughout the state was we'd like to have more information on embalming. And so I'd really like to get some more embalming topics on our show as well, and kind of talk about that a little bit. The importance of embalming, what it is, the history of it, all of that, anything to do with embalming. Embalming does get kind of a bad rap in the media, but I don't think it's as bad as what it's portrayed as. And I think if we can put some education out there and some information out there, hopefully people will start looking at it a little bit more again.
Right. And I guess you're still on track. You want to do one a week now. You have 52, and you're going forward right into 2021. Same schedule.
We're moving in high gear. In fact, we're out almost a full month ahead now. So the stuff that we're recording now, the shows that we're recording now, are actually coming out the following month, which is nice because we can get it all done. We can get it set up, and we can put it on there. And so it'll automatically drop when it's supposed to drop on YouTube or on the podcasts, and we can go from there. We're not scrambling.
When is that scheduled? Tuesdays and Thursdays, you had said?
Podcasts, all the podcasts on the different podcast platforms, which we're currently on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeart, I believe. I think we're on iHeart. Yeah, now iHeart's kind of a little harder because there's a delay in getting on there originally. I think you need 2 or 3 months of shows before they put you on there. But I think we're on there now. We're on Radio Public, but we use a program that actually, we put it into the program. We say Tuesday at 10 a.m., drop this show, and it goes out instantly to all of those platforms at 10 a.m. Then our YouTube show, which is the exact same show, only the video version of it, drops on YouTube at 10 a.m. on the following Thursdays.
Great. And mortuary students, have they? I was listening to one of the episodes, and you had a mortuary student on, and I found that interesting. So this is a good learning opportunity for them, and they can search and maybe find a subject like you had mentioned before that, hey, they're working on, and get some background on. Have you had much feedback from mortuary students, or you've had some on also?
We've had some on, and I would love to get more mortuary students on. We're fortunate here in Washington to have a program at Lake Washington Technical Institute, funeral service education program. We're also fortunate to have a program just south of us down in Gresham, my alma mater, at Mount Hood. And I'd love to hear more from them as well as Lake Washington, but I'd like to get some mortuary students from across the country as well. Mortuary school, the idea is we learn the same stuff, but we learn it differently. And I'd love to hear from, some mortuary schools back east, Midwest, all the different schools, and talk with them. Mortuary students fascinate me. They really do, because they're so full of energy, so full of life, and so full of wanting to change where we're at. And I love it. I think that we need to have some change. Funeral service has been pretty much stagnant for 50 years. It hasn't really changed a lot. We're seeing that now. In fact, I think we're seeing more change in the last 5 years than we've seen in the last 50 years, frankly. But mortuary students are a big part of that. They are the ones that are driving that change. And so I'd love to hear from more mortuary students and get some ideas from them on what they would like to see, because they are our future. They are who's going to take over this seat when I leave. So, we need to know about them.
Oh yeah. And other state associations, do you think they could model what you're doing? And if so, have you had anyone call you and say, hey, we might be interested in doing that? And if not, or if someone did, what would you tell them about the way, what you've learned?
I absolutely think anybody can model this, and I think they should. I mean, it's a great way to connect with your members. It's a great way to connect with the community. It's a great way to connect with the profession. And it's very easy, very simple to do, very cost effective. I would absolutely recommend any state association come up with a program like this, or even, just using the form. It doesn't have to be like this, just using the format to get the information out there. I think it's a great thing to do. I don't know many that are. We've talked about it on the national calls that we do. But, there are state associations out there that are very progressive, that are doing a lot of great things that we're not doing. I know of some that have created apps for their, that their members can download, and all the information is right there on their phone. They don't have to look for a website or look at their email. They can set their phone up for push notifications. I mean, that's a great idea to have an app for the association. I would be all for it.
Right.
So, there's a lot of associations out there that are doing a lot of great things for their members. And, we're just one that is trying something, and so far it seems to be working.
Yeah, that leads right into my next question. It's been a year now, so it is working. And how do you feel after, like, yeah, you take a step back and look and go, hey, this has worked out pretty well.
It honestly hit me today. Just before you came on, I was actually prepping another show that's going to come out, and that other show was it would be our 53rd, so our 1-year anniversary show. And I didn't even realize it when we were recording it, but after we were done, I looked at it and I thought, my goodness, we started with a thought that we weren't sure if this was going to last for 5 minutes, 5 weeks, 5 months, or what. We don't even know how long it's going to last still. But 52 weeks into it, we're 1 year into it, and it's still going strong, and it just keeps climbing in downloads. And so, to me, I think I'm very proud of that part of it, of the fact that it has continued to snowball. Very proud of the fact that we can do this, and our board is 100% behind it. Our members, it's for the members, our members, but it's for the members of funeral service. And we're getting a lot of great feedback from the community, from the membership in that, saying, keep going with it. So I'm excited. I think, content is king. And I think the more content we can put out there, the more conversations that we can have, I think the better it's going to be for the entire profession. So, we're excited and looking forward to 2021 and seeing where that brings us.
Yeah. And a final question. Yeah, I'll put you on the spot. You have one episode that's your favorite. Anyone that you look back at those 52 and go, I really like this one above the others.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that, because it's going to be, actually later today, we're going to record another one. But it's with our current president, Jessica Wakefield. We get a lot of comments when she and I get on. We've actually done, I think, 2 or 3 now, and we're going to start trying to do more of these together, because we've been friends for so long, number one, that it's really just a back and forth. It's like 2 people sitting down at the dinner table, just having a conversation. We have so much fun with it. We laugh, we joke with each other. And those have been kind of my favorite ones. Those are also the ones that we get the most hits on, or the most downloads, of people saying, look at these 2 guys. What are they even talking about? And it's just one of those things where, like I say, we have no agenda, it's just whatever conversation happens.
That's
So
great.
it's a lot of fun with her.
Great. Well, Rob, I thank you for letting me switch roles with you, and thank you for this interview, and much
Yes.
appreciated. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Stan, thank you for doing this and for everybody for watching it. Again, the American Funeral Director is a great monthly publication. Check it out. It's from, who is it? Kate's?
Thanks,
Is it
Boylston
Yeah,
Publication.
Kate's. Yeah.
And we also have our sister publication, American Cemetery and Cremation Magazine.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you don't get that, what a great article. I mean, it's like $99 for 2 years.
Yeah, I think we went
issues.
specials. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy inexpensive and great information. If you get it now, I would get it so you get the February issue.
Oh, we might see you.
Yeah. No, Stan, this has been so much fun. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for helping us to promote this show and to see where it's going to take us.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of different, but doing it this way, doing your own podcast that's going to be on Member Talks, but it's going to be in your magazine. So Thanks for playing along.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
All right, guys. See you guys all next week.